Good morning to everyone. So, in the previous session, we have seen about geology, various branches of geology, and the scope of the geology. Okay, so today we are going to discuss about the structure of the earth and its composition. Okay, so our earth sphere, it is basically divided into four different type of spheres. So one is the lithosphere, so which consists of the solid earth. Next one is the atmosphere, which contains the gases that surrounding the earth, which is known as the air. The next one is the hydrosphere, so the water which is present on, under, and over the surface of the earth is known as hydrosphere. And finally the biosphere, so all the living organisms that is present on the earth, it comes under the biosphere. Okay, so the interaction between each and everything is very important. So let us see one by one in detail. So coming to the lithosphere. So litho means stone. Okay, the stony part of the earth is known as the lithosphere. Okay, so in lithosphere there are three different layers. So the uppermost layer is known as the crust, the middle one is known as the mantle, and the innermost is known as the core. Okay, so coming to the crust. So what does mean by crust? So the uppermost shell of the earth is known as the crust. So it is divided into two layers. The one upper layer is known as the continental crust, which consists of the land part. Then the lower layer is known as the oceanic crust, which consists of the ocean. Okay, so the thickness of this crust ranges from 60 to 70 kilometers below the mountain region, and the thickness in the oceanic region ranges from 5 to 10 kilometer, and under the continents the thickness of the crust ranges from 35 kilometer. Okay, so the boundary which marks between the upper crust and the lower crust is known as the Conorrod discontinuity. Okay, so Conorrod discontinuity is a boundary which separates the upper crust and the lower crust. Then the Mohorovic discontinuity is the boundary layer which separates the mantle and the crust. Okay, so this Mohorovic discontinuity, it is named after the scientist who discovered it, who's known as a professor as Mohorovic. So this discontinuity, it is also known as M discontinuity or simply Moho. Okay, so next coming to Sial. So what does mean by Sial? So the upper continental crust is known as Sial. So this layer is rich in silica and aluminum. So okay, so that is why it is named as Sial. It contains all type of rocks such as igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks. Okay, so the rocks over here, it is very rich in granite composition. Okay, so then density of the Cl is 2.4 gram per cc. So the Conorrod discontinuity, it is located at a depth of 11 km from the Cl. Next coming to Sima. Sima, which is known as the lower continental crust. Okay, so the thickness is 23 kilometers from the Conorrod discontinuity is known as Sima. So this layer is very much rich in silica and magnesium, and the rocks which is present over here, it is very much rich in basaltic composition. Okay, so the density is 3 gram per cc. Next coming to mantle. So the thickness of the mantle is about 2865 kilometers. Okay, so the mantle is a one which has very much dense than the crust. Okay, so here based on the velocity, the mantle is classified into two. One is the upper mantle and another one is the lower mantle. So the velocity of the upper mantle is 11.32 to 11.4 km per second, whereas the velocity of the lower mantle is 13.4 km per second. Okay, so the lower mantle extends from 1000 km to the core boundary. Okay, so the lithosphere which is separated from the mantle is called as asthenosphere. So in this mantle only all the volcanic eruption and the seismic activity occurs. It has very much high density and it is very much rich in iron and magnesium. So next, coming to the four layers of mantle. Okay, so first one is a lithosphere. So lithosphere extends from 70 to 100 kilometers from the crust. The next one is the asthenosphere, which extends from 100 to 350 kilometer. Then the upper mantle, which extends from 350 kilometer to 670 kilometer. Then the lower mantle, which extends from 670 kilometer to 2900 kilometer. Okay, so next, coming to the last and the final layer, that is core. So this is the third and the innermost structural shell of the earth. Okay, so it starts at a depth of 2900 kilometer and it extends to the deep to the core. So here it has very high density than the mantle. Okay, so the density range is 10 gram per cc. Okay, so the outer core behaves like a liquid. So the liquid like core, it extends from a depth of 2900 kilometer to about 5100 kilometer. So this layer, it is very much rich in iron and nickel. Okay, so these are all the three main layers of our earth. Okay, the first one is the crust, next one is a mantle, then last one is the core. Okay, next, coming to the atmosphere. Okay, so what is mean by atmosphere? So the outer gaseous part of the earth, which is starting from the surface and extending up to 700 kilometer, is known as atmosphere. Okay, so our atmosphere, it occupies 1 millionth part of our total mass of the earth. So our atmosphere contains various mixture of gases, which is called as air. So the various type of gases that is present is nitrogen, oxygen, argon, CO2 and H2, hydrogen. Okay, so all the composition is given here. Okay, so this mixture of the gas, it has a specific composition. Okay, so this composition, it is uniform up to a height of 80 kilometer. Okay, so this zone is known as homosphere. So after that, its composition gets different and that is known as the heterosphere. Okay, so that layer is known as heterosphere. So coming to the structure of the atmosphere. So there are 5 layers in our atmosphere. The first layer is known as troposphere. Second layer is known as stratosphere. Third one is the mesosphere. Fourth one is the ionosphere. And the fifth layer is known as the exosphere. So let us see one by one in detail. First one is the troposphere. So this troposphere is a lowermost layer of the atmosphere. So its height is about 12 km from the surface of the earth. Okay, so it is a dense of all the layers. So its main role, what is the main role of this troposphere is that it is very much responsible for the weather forming and all the meteorological process that is taking place on the earth. Okay, so this troposphere, it contains about 9/10 of the total mass of the atmosphere. Okay, here the temperature in the troposphere, the temperature starts decreasing at the rate of 6.3 degrees Celsius per kilometer. So for every kilometer, the temperature falls down. Okay, so this troposphere, it is very much responsible for the thorough mixing of the gas. Okay, so here the composition of the gas doesn't remain the same, so it has mixing, right? So next, coming to the stratosphere. So stratosphere is the second layer of the atmosphere. Okay, so the layer which separates the troposphere and stratosphere is known as a tropopause. Okay, so this one, the tropopause separates the troposphere and stratosphere. So it is a second layer of the atmosphere. So its height, it ranges about 55 kilometers. Okay, so the temperature remains constant up to 20 kilometers of height from the tropopause, and it starts increasing after then. Okay, so the upper layer of the stratosphere contains the ozone gas. So this zone is known as the ozone layer. So we all know that how much important ozone layer is. So it is a layer which protects our earth. Okay, so it absorbs all the solar radiation, and it absorbs all the ultraviolet rays which is coming from the solar from the sun, and it protects our earth. Okay, so if there is any problem in the ozone layer, then our whole earth will be getting destroyed. So this ozone layer plays a very vital role in the sustaining of the life. Okay, so in 2000, so NASA have found out a ozone hole in the ozone layer. So it's being a threatening one. So we have to start reducing the amount of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and other greenhouse gases which is emitting from the atmosphere. So this is responsible for making the hole in the ozone layer. Okay, so the layer which separates the stratosphere from the other zone is known as a stratopause. The next layer is the mesosphere. So the third layer of our atmosphere is known as a mesosphere, which is a very cold region. Okay, so this layer extends up to 80 km from the surface of the earth. So in this layer is also known as radio waves observing layer. Okay, so in this layer all the radio waves gets observed, and it is characterized by a steep fall in temperature. Okay, there is a sudden fall in the temperature. While the height is increasing, there is a sudden fall in the temperature. The temperature goes beyond minus 100 degrees Celsius also. The next layer is the ionosphere. Okay, so the ionosphere extends up to a height of 1000 to 2000 km from the Earth's surface. So the part of the ionosphere lying between 80 to 800 km is called thermosphere. Okay, so the ionosphere it is almost responsible for ionization process. So all the atoms are broken up into ions over here. Okay, so this layer it is also known as D layer. So it breaks all the gases and it keeps in the form of ions. So this layer protects us from falling meteoroids. Okay, so because it burns most of the meteoroids over there itself. And finally coming to exosphere. So exosphere is the fifth layer. So it is present above the ionosphere. It is the outermost zone of the atmosphere. So it has very low density and it has very high temperature. Okay, so its temperature is nearly 1000 degrees Celsius over there. So because of this high temperature, all the particles are being separated over here. Okay, so the concentration of each gas particle is being reduced, and it has no offense for the space traveler. So the last sphere is the biosphere. Okay, so the living organisms which is present in our earth is known as a biosphere. All the living organisms such as plants, animals and human beings is known as a biosphere. So these are all the various spheres that is present in our earth. Okay, so let me shortly summarize what we have seen today. So our atmosphere or spheres classified into 4 types, that is a lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere and biosphere. Okay, so lithosphere, it is the stony part of our earth. So it consists of 3 layers. So uppermost layer is known as the crust, middle one is the mantle, and the last layer is the core. Okay, so next coming to the atmosphere. So atmosphere, there are 5 different layers in the atmosphere. So one is the troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, ionosphere and exosphere. Okay, so finally the biosphere, where all the living organisms are present. Okay, so this is a structure of our earth and different types of sphere that is present in our earth. Okay, so let us have a short assessment. So find out the structure of the earth. So what are the different parts? Okay, kindly label it. So the next assessment is draw a neat sketch of different layers of atmosphere. Okay, so we have seen about the 5 layers. So draw a neat sketch and label it, and also mark their kilometers. Okay, troposphere ranges from which kilometer to which kilometer, and also stratosphere similarly. Each layer you have to mark it by means of the kilometers that is having. So these are all the some of the references, so kindly refer to it. Thank you.